I grew up in Iran as a Shiite Muslim. Every morning in the school, they told us to shout death to America, death to Israel. I saw people being executed and tortured and beaten, and it happened to myself. Everything they told us that Israel is doing to Palestinians, the Islamic regime was doing it to us.
If you think that only doom and gloom and bad news can come out of Iran, well, I have news for you. I'm sitting today with Ramin Parsa, who's a friend, but also an Iranian Muslim who's come to know Christ and love the people of Israel. It's a lot to unpack, and we have time to do so. So today in our neighborhood, the story of how things can look different with the relationship with Iran and how finding the true God can completely change the destiny of a nation. At the beginning of the October 7th war, we're on an outpost somewhere in Judea on a hilltop. You came with a group of friends to bring a meal and bless the soldiers, and you stand up and start preaching to the soldiers in Hebrew mixed with English, if I remember correctly, about your friend from Israel, Yeshua, Jesus.
Yes.
And I think everyone in the room was transfixed to what you were saying and surprised by what you were saying, because they didn't know how to process it. An Iranian who was Muslim, who came to believe in a Jewish Messiah, and then moved to Israel to bless the Jewish people. But maybe walk us through how you ended up in that room in front of a group of soldiers, part of the My Soldiers, talking about your personal faith.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. You know, I grew up in Iran as a Shiite Muslim. And all my life, I was told to hate the Jews and hate Christians, hate Israel, America. And every morning in the school, they told us to shout death to America, death to Israel. This is how I grew up. In our textbooks in the school, we had like caricatures of Israeli soldiers looking very mean, killing the Palestinian baby, and the baby's crying. So, you know, to create a hatred toward the Jewish people and Israelis, to demonize the Jews. And so this is how I grew up, in the schools, in the media, you know, radio, TV, newspapers, propaganda against Israel and Jews.
Yeah.
So then I began to research, and I saw that everything that they were doing is exactly what the Islamic Sharia law teaches. So I lost my faith in Islam. I knew.
Were you religious as a young Muslim?
Yes, I was very devout. My whole family, my mother, my sisters, were devout. We were going to mosques. And as a Shiite Muslim, we used to go beat ourselves, you know, on the streets. And everything they told us that Israel is doing to Palestinians, the Islamic regime was doing it to us. But I knew there was a God, and I began to cry out to God, and I began to look for him and search for him. I said, God, if you're real, who are you? If you're not real, what am I doing here? So when I was 19, for the first time I heard about Yeshua. And in Iran, it's illegal, actually. The Bible is illegal.
Really?
Yes. Actually, it's death penalty if you leave Islam and become a Christian. First time I said, no, I don't want this. This is another Western religion, you know, this is like the same family maybe with Islam. But God didn't give up on me. I keep hearing and hearing. And then eventually the third time I heard that Yeshua died for me on the cross and he rose from the dead. And if I believe in him, I'll be saved. Eventually I opened my heart. I said, okay, Yeshua, if this is true, if you died for me and you rose from the dead, then come into my life, show me. I want to see. I don't want to be deceived again by another religion. And the moment I say that, the heat went through my hand, the warmth, it went through all my body. I began to shake, and I started crying, and I felt this love I had never felt before. I felt this joy and this peace. It's like as if someone lifted 300 pounds of weight off my shoulder.
Was this still in Iran? Or
Yes,
were you
still in Iran, yes. I just began to have this love for people around me, even for people who torture me and hurt me. I began to forgive them and feel love. Eventually, I began to look for a New Testament for the gospel. And as I read from Matthew chapter 1 through Matthew 5, I began to cry. And I saw that the difference. I saw Jesus was a Jew from Israel.
Yeah.
And I saw that he says, love your enemies and pray for those who hate you and spitefully use you. And the contrast, you know, in Islam it says to kill those who don't believe in Allah, especially Jews and Christians. It curses Jews and Christians. And then here, Jesus is saying to bless people, to forgive, to love, to go the extra mile. It was completely different. So my life was completely changed. And God just put a love in my heart for Israel, for the Jewish people.
I find like often the story is that the Muslims that come to faith in the Arab world, the two big things happen. One, it's almost always a supernatural revelation. And two, they stop hating the Jews and start loving the Jews. And we look at this, it takes away the cynicism that we carry in our hearts of doubting, doubting that God works, doubting that out of a country like Iran, people that have a true loving heart could come out, especially for the Jewish people.
Where the darkness was intense the most, God is working there. And who could have imagined out of all these countries, Iran would be, which is the #1 enemy of Israel, becoming actually #1 friend of Israel as far as people are concerned.
Is that the case?
Yes, and millions of Iranians are becoming Christians. And I've met thousands of them that they have come to the Messiah and they love Israel, they love the Jewish people. They feel this sympathy toward Israelis because they have been oppressed by the same ideology. You know, I've seen movies about Holocaust and I've cried and had this compassion and zeal for the Jewish people. And that's why eventually actually I got married with an Israeli and moved to Israel and began to serve the Israelis. When the war happened, I would start going to the army bases and I was volunteering, cooking for displaced Israelis.
It's such a bizarre story.
It's God.
I'm interested to know, what is the interaction that you have as a person walking down the street? People say, well, what's that funny accent that you have? I said, oh, ani Iran, I'm from Iran. How do people respond to that?
Actually, they're amazed, they're shocked. In fact, when I was volunteering, I was cooking and helping the displaced Israelis and making food for the soldiers. They were amazed, and they were at the same time hopeful and rejoicing that one who was once the enemy now is a friend and helping them.
How do you look back at the Iranian people? So you're a son of that nation. You have a family, I'm guessing, back in Iran. When you think about them, when you pray for them, what is going through your mind?
You know, the Iranian people have gone through a fire. The past 46 years, Iranians have suffered so much economically. In the beginning of revolution, they went through a war. Like almost more than 1 million Iranians were killed in the war. And
you're talking about what, the Iraq-Iran war?
Exactly.
I didn't know it was that many.
Yes, only 1 million on the Iranian side, and then there's a million and more on the Iraqi side. So 2.3 million people were killed. And then the Ayatollah began to execute people, oppress the women, forcing, mandatory hijab. And Iranians went through so much suffering.
This is from the beginning of the 80s till the end of the 80s?
1979, the revolution happened. 1980, the war began. And then it went all the way through 1988. And the regime in Iran began to oppress the people, like socially, men get arrested for bizarre things, for being in a party. For singing or for being with a girlfriend, they get arrested, beaten, tortured. The Islamic Sharia law became the law of the land. Iranians in 46 years, they saw social oppression and then economic oppression. So Iranians, for example, when revolution happened, $1 was 7 to 1 to Persian currency. When I escaped Iran in 2006, $1 was 700 to 1. Today, $1 is 86,000 to 1. So imagine the inflation, the oppression, there's no jobs. Despite Iran being a rich country, wealthy country, has the number 3rd oil in the world, 2nd gas in the world after Russia. A rich country, but all the money goes to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Houthis, and for terrorism.
I think it's the corruption that kind of government brings that really brings down the economy.
That's right.
It's the evil of the government took a country that was a net exporter of refined oil products. It had natural resources in agriculture and minerals and stuff like that. Now Iran has to buy refined oil because they destroyed in the revolution all the refineries within Iran. So they have crude oil, they have natural gas, they don't have the means to process either of them. It's insane.
That's right.
And you look at that, it's like it's a corruption that is so all-consuming.
That's right.
That it brings down every element of the society.
That's right.
And then someone grows up and they don't have the opportunity to succeed. They don't have the opportunity to experience happiness. They don't have the opportunity to experience blessing in the way we were intended to because of the evil of that government.
In Iran, as an individual, you cannot do business. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to export pistachios or rugs, and then I'm going to import, let's say, satellite dishes, or I'm going to import TV.
It's all government.
Exactly. All done by IRGC. There's a revolution brewing in Iran, and it is just waiting for a spark to explode because people are suffering economically. People cannot buy potatoes, onions, the things that Iranians used to go for vacation to France and to Italy.
Yeah.
Today they can't afford to buy basic things. There's a protest in Iran just 2 days ago by the retired people because they're not getting paid their pensions. And they were protesting and they say, in Persian they say, دروغ میگن دشمن ما آمریکاست، دشمن ما همینجاست. meaning that...
I'm going to need you to translate that.
Yes. It means that it's a lie that our enemy is America, our enemy is right here, this government.
Yeah.
So this is people shouting on the streets. And people are becoming bolder because they have nothing to lose anymore, and they're suffering. And in the midst of that, God is working, and millions are leaving Islam. You know, there are 75,000 mosques in Iran, 50,000 are closed.
Really?
Due to no attendance. As a kid, when I was growing up, we used to go on the streets when there was the Muharram, is like beating yourself and mourning for the imams who died. And like thousands of people, young and old, they go out and they beat themselves in black outfit. Today, I talk to my family, they say not even 5 people go. You know, when I was, I think, 18, I went to a protest in Iran. And this is after I left Islam, before I became a Christian, a believer. And all of the soldiers were beating people. They were not Iranians. They imported from Hezbollah, from Lebanon. And these people, like the proxies, they would bring them in to oppress the people, to shut down the protest. Now the proxies are almost, scattered, and they're in disarray because of what Israel did with the Hamas, with Hezbollah, with the Houthis. So now the Iranian, even soldiers, they said, why should I go and beat my countrymen? Yeah. I don't want to do this. And that's why the regime is very scared now, because they don't have the proxies to fight for them, to defend the revolution. And there's a huge, huge uprising among the people who used to support the regime now. Now they're saying no.
So the question is, if Islam is the problem, and you're no longer Muslim, is the only solution for resolving, let's call it the problem that's called the Islamic, Republic of Iran, removing the Islamic part of it? Is that the only solution to this issue?
So there's a shift in identity. We used to identify with Islam, that we're an Islamic nation. The country is called Islamic Republic of Iran. Yeah. Today, Iranian says, no, it's enough.
Take us back to Persia.
Exactly. Yeah, we are identifying with Persian. We are the children of Cyrus and Darius and Xerxes and Artaxerxes. We're not...
Some of them were great Zionists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of them were. They supported Israel. Yeah. I mean, Xerxes was married to a Jewish woman, Esther. And so Iranians are shifting from identifying with Islam to identifying with their Persian and nationalistic heritage. They're saying, we are Persians. We had human rights 2,500 years ago. Today, we are the number 2 violator of human rights. What happened to us? So there's an amazing awakening of people turning away from Islam to their Persian heritage. And the Persian heritage, it's friendly to Israel. And the last verse in the Jewish Bible, in the 2nd Chronicle, last chapter, last verse, is the command of King Cyrus to the Jewish people to go to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, and to rebuild the temple. Artaxerxes, he sent Nehemiah to build a wall, and he gave Ezra the commission to go and teach the Torah to the Jewish people. So from there we went to become number 1 enemy of Israel. So people are seeing this and they're shifting around. And that's why the Bible is illegal, because they don't want people to read and to see who we were as a nation.
If you've stuck around so far, well, first of all, good for you. Then pause this video and for just a second, like, share, and subscribe. Why do we do that? Because it makes sure that you and all your friends get to see this video again, and that others on the interwebs get to know that this was content that is interesting for others to enjoy. Since October 7th, 2023, war has devastated Israel with relentless missile attacks that have destroyed communities.
Over 57,000 acres of forests have been reduced to ash. We're calling on you. At TBN Israel, we're starting a campaign to replant these forests. We want you to be part of rebuilding the land of Israel. Click on the link below to plant a tree and help us restore hope to our land.
You know, one of the things that the devil does is he steals your identity and he gives you a false identity. Yeah. So Persians, we had a false identity. We would die for Muhammad and for Hussein and for Islam, not knowing that these were actually our enemies. When Islam came to Iran, you saw October 7, what happened. This is exactly how Islam came to Iran. Yeah. They raided, they raped, they beat, they killed, and that's how Iran became Islamic. Most of the countries in the Middle East were Christians.
You're talking about the 7th century.
Exactly. Yeah. It was all by the sword, by force. But now, after 1,400 years, we have woken up. Now with the internet, they see on Instagram, or although it's blocked, but people use VPN and they access, and they see Israelis are dancing, and there are Arabs walking down the streets. There's Islamic prayer in Jerusalem. They have a better life even than Iranian people. And when they see these things, they realize they have been lied to, they have been deceived. But it's changing in a sense that they have hope that this regime will not last too long. They know this regime is gonna fall, and they have so much hope in that. And Iranian people, culturally, are different people. They have music, art, computer science. They want to be like the West. They look at success. They want to be advanced. They want to be in that kind of society, not to have an AK-47 go on the streets, shooting and saying Allahu Akbar, and we want to do this, we want to jihad. Those days are gone in Iran. Iranian people are changing and shifting. And this is a beautiful hope that I have, and I believe it's because of millions of people turning away from Islam and becoming Christians. And it's happening. Iran has the fastest growing church in the world.
Really?
Yes, underground church is exploding. Millions are becoming Christians in Iran. And they said in past 25 years, estimate 8 million people have become believers, becoming Christian. And then
out of how many?
Out of 90 million.
Really? It's incredible.
So it's amazing, yes. And if you notice, in the aftermath of October 7th, every pro-Israel rally, Iranians were there to support.
Yes.
They were next to the Israelis, the Jewish people.
By the way, we're doing this content for the TBN Israel channel, and almost every content that we ever upload has Iranians in the comment section saying, don't listen to them, we love you. Don't listen to them, we love you. And it's across the board to the point, it's like, who are these people?
Exactly.
I find that gives me incredible hope.
There's a huge support for America and for Israel in Iran by the people of Iran. They see that our enemy is not Israel and America. Our enemy is actually right here, these people who rule us, who destroyed our livelihood. There are more pro-Israel people in Iran than in Europe, actually. And it's a phenomenon. It's just something that the media doesn't talk about, doesn't cover enough. But we will see. When the regime falls, we see that I have hope that we will have direct flight from Tel Aviv to Tehran.
Again.
Amen.
Because they existed.
Yes. I believe Iran and Israel will become two allies in the future.
I'll pray for that.
Amen. When revolution happened in 1979, it actually radicalized the whole region. All these terrorist groups began to pop up, and every country wanted to have their own version of Islamic revolution, and it kind of destroyed the whole Middle East. But I believe the way it started is going to end. So when Iran collapses, the regime in Iran, I think it's going to cause all these Islamic regimes and proxies to go away, and we're going to have a relatively peace for a while at least, and then we're going to have friendship with Israel and with America and with all the West, and it's going to cause a lot of change in the Middle East when this regime is gone, because this is the head of the octopus. So it's a lot of things are changing, shifting around, and I believe we're going to have a good future with Israel.
I hope and I pray for the people of Iran, and I hope and I pray that they have a better government that gives them a better option than the way of radical Islam and siphoning their economy to cause destruction and death in the region.
Yes.
That's my prayer.
The leaders in Iran actually are not Iranians, the Ayatollahs. If you look at...
What are they?
They are Arabs who came from Lebanon.
Really?
Yes, and from Bahrain and from Iraq. So if you look at the outfit they wear, the black turban the Ayatollah wears, the black turban is a symbol of that this person who wears this is a direct descendant of Muhammad, which means they're not Persians. So in Iran, all of the leaders in Iran right now, their last name is a city. When they came to Iran, because they didn't have a last name, they chose a city as their last name. And that's how they eventually took over Iran and they destroyed the whole country. And that's why people are realizing that these people who rule us are not actually Iranians. I remember when my niece and nephews were born, you go to get an ID. They give you a list to choose names. You cannot just choose a name you want. And the list is all Islamic name. Like in my neighborhood.
Not Persian names.
Exactly. So in my neighborhood, we had like 10 Ali or 5 Muhammad or Hussein, and there's so many of them because they were trying to completely change their identity. And now that's why Iranians, all of them, in their ID, there's one name, but they have a nickname of Persian name. Like in ID is Muhammad, but they choose Darius as his name, or Daryavish.
So for the Iranian people, according to what you're saying and what people on the street are saying, the U.S. sanctions and the new maximum pressure program by President Trump and his cabinet, that's a good thing for the Iranians?
Well, it will hurt them, but...
In the long term.
Exactly, but they prefer that. They prefer, because even when Obama lifted the sanctions, they made the deal, it was a very bad deal. It released billions of dollars to Iran, but none of that money affected the people. Again, it went to IRGC, to proxies, and spent on making the missile defense and all these things. And the people know with sanctions or with no sanctions, there's not much difference. And they prefer Trump to put maximum pressure in hope that it will topple the regime. It breaks the regime down, or it causes the regime to collapse. The Iranians used to go on the streets in '79 and say, death to Shah. Shah was the king. Now, Iranians are saying death to us for saying death to Shah. What a big mistake we made. Remorseful, they're very remorseful, sorry. They had a prosperous, beautiful nation, and then now they are it's like the black sheep of the whole nations. They're known as terrorists. Their passport is good for nothing. They cannot go anywhere. There's no money, there's no economy, there's no jobs, there's no hope. So they said, what did we do with this revolution? Yeah. They promised us everything, and Khomeini promised Iranians free transportation. We're going to give you free this, free that. Money of the oil money, we're going to give it to you, distribute among everybody equally. We're going to make education free. We're going to, not only did they become free, even now with paying, they don't have electricity. They're paying for it. They don't have it. And so that's why it caused them to shift and say, enough is enough, and there's so much hope. I have more hope for Iran than even most countries in Europe, because they're going the wrong direction. They're becoming anti-Semitic. They're allowing all these Hamas. There was no pro-Hamas rallies in Iran because nobody would go.
Well, because Iranians have seen what it really means to submit to that kind of ideology.
Exactly. In Jeremiah 49, verse 35 through the end, there's a promise about Iran. It's a prophecy. And God says that in the last days, I will destroy the rulers in Iran. Yeah. I will establish my kingdom, my throne there, and I will bring prosperity to Iran again. It's a prophecy and a promise, and I think it's happening. So there's a lot of hope for Iran, and I'm very optimistic. I am hoping that this year things will change.
Thank you, Ramin.
Thank you.
And I want to say, you and your life, and I've met several people like you from multiple countries. It gives me hope, and I think it gives us all hope. Hope that God is faithful, hope that even in a place that we believe is controlled by darkness, there are people that see the right thing to do and oppose the darkness. That's where I find hope.
Amen.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.